Hello friends, welcome back to Strategic Management. Now, along with developing an insight on culture, corporate culture, which I would be continuing with for a very short while just to develop a connectivity between our last session and this session. I would be taking you towards a very, or should I say, most important aspect which is responsible for driving strategy and managing strategy, strategically managing value webs, value chains, strategically managing things and managing strategy, and that element is leadership. Leadership actually is a character, and we would be looking at that thing with its entirety. It's one of the most important characteristics which we can develop. It is one of the most important personality value which we can develop. It imbibes all the elements of core values and beliefs which we have discussed. It actually drives culture. Let's see, we will talk about this, and most of us know about it, we talk about it, we admire great leaders, we wonder how they became such kind of a leader, how they are leading organizations and businesses, how they bring so prominent kind of changes in this world at an organizational level, at multi-organizational level, at national level, at global level, and so on, at societal level, cultural levels, and so on, at micro level also, at very localized level also, we find leadership around us. But then we have to think about what drives leadership and how leadership drives everything. But then let us focus upon the continuity element which we were talking about in terms of culture, and we were wondering about the importance of corporate culture for strategy execution. You see, to take a chord from the last discussion, I must continue that a culture that is well matched to the chosen strategy, and I wish to add to what authors have described here in this text, and we are taking clue from Kellett, Thompson, Strickland and Gamble, Crafting and Executing Strategy, The Quest for Competitive Advantage, published by McGraw-Hill Education. So, they say that a culture that is well matched to the chosen strategy. When they say that culture is matched with the chosen strategy, I would say that strategy is is also supposed to match with the culture basically. If we have an ingrained culture, we have fundamental values which are driving our culture, we have beliefs which are driving our culture, then strategy must be aligned to that basically, and strategy is envisioned according to the cultural values we have. So, we may say that at business level culture is matched with the chosen strategy, but at a larger level the context is that strategy is envisioned according to the cultural values, cultural beliefs, cultural aura we have around us. And then the authors further add is that, and the requirements of the strategy execution effort focuses the attention of employees on what is most important to this effort. In this manner, it can align the efforts and decisions of employees throughout the firm and minimize the need for direct supervision. If we know that this is how all of us think, this is how all of us would go ahead, these are our beliefs, these are our values. So, the plan which we refer to, management of strategy, becomes much synchronized, easier. Otherwise, you see, it is a pure mechanical exercise when we talk of a plan basically, that we have to do this and how to do that. You must have heard the Japanese manufacturing culture, Indian manufacturing culture, American work culture, Indian work culture, and then you must have heard people saying Indian values and culture in working spaces, in the work areas or in organizations. You must have heard these kind of things basically. But the point here is that if we are at the same page, we follow the similar traits we have similar beliefs, then it's much easier, because culture is a fabric which adds our focus, our submission to what we are doing. So, this plan or the execution doesn't remains mechanical, it actually gets a life. You may say that culture provides life to strategy execution, we may say that. Further, the authors they add that culture induced peer pressure further induces company personnel to do things in a manner that aids the cause of good strategy execution. That is what we are discussing. It is a fabric, it gives life to whatever we do. You see, if we believe in the same thing, basically, if we feel motivated that we are together at the similar levels, we are going ahead together, and we will see how it happens. Basically, many organizational leaders, I am talking about leadership, many organizational leaders, they actually develop a cultural harmony first. They rejuvenate our values, core values, to the highest of the levels, wherein we feel that yes, these are our core values, and then they get our beliefs focused towards a direction in a uniform way. Basically, the point here is that if we are unified on something, that thing gets excelled. Excellence, efficiency, effectiveness comes through that unified belief. For example, cleanliness of workplaces, of plants, that definitely adds a lot of value. There are several certification programs which go on and which add perspective and value to these kind of things, basically, that how do we do things, how we actually maintain the structures around us, how we are precise in doing those things, basically precision, following the time, following the rules, submitting to the cause, believing in the cause, finding a purpose in whatever you are doing precisely, and feeling responsible for that purpose or doing your part. All these are elements of cultural development. Then the authors further talk about that a company culture that is consistent with the requirements of for good strategy execution can energize employees. That is what I am putting forth in front of you. It deepens their commitment, and it is the most important phrase in these 3 lines: deepening of the commitment. I submit to whatever I do with excellence. For example, if you will look at a hospital, and especially government hospitals, I am not talking of business or non-business at this moment, but government hospitals, I have realized that wonderful execution is found there as far as the whole structure goes. For example, if you look into All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute, and it is not about only government institutions, it is about several other institutions, and my favorite examples are Narayan Hrudayalaya and Arvind Eye Care, and then there are several private hospitals also, private institutions also, wherein doctors, they believe that their life is devoted to their patients. They became doctor to serve people, and the other support teams, the nursing staff, the support staff, the support teams, even the non-medicos, people associated with the functioning of the hospitals and so on, even the accounting and finance team, and everyone, administration, people who are at the ground level in support, basically, if they believe that everyone in this organization is basically there to serve the patient and to relieve the patient of the plight the patient is having because of the disease the patient has incurred or is suffering with, then the effect of that kind of a belief actually is realized by the patient. Patient feels happy, relieved, and when the patients they recover, they feel thankful, they feel happy, and that is how a system goes on, basically. Visit one of I would not say that one should fall sick to visit these places, but just to feel that how they are working. Once I was visiting All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and I was meeting a professor of global repute, and she was addressing, attending to so many patients in one single day with that kind of a poise, a calm, a smile, happiness. That patients were feeling happy to meet her, basically to tell her what they are feeling, despite of the fact that she had very little time per patient because of the strength of the patients, the numbers of the patient, but she was not in a hurry. If a patient wanted more time, she was trying to give more time, but she was there for everyone at that moment. I saw my parents working with government hospitals throughout their lives. I never saw my father and mother frustrated on anything, basically because of their work pressures, because they nurtured this fundamental belief of that they are there to serve people, basically, and they were always happy. They wanted to serve them, they wanted to do things at their best, and that is what they did for whole of their lives. And I watched them doing this, for almost entirety, up till their physical strength could allow them to do whatever they wanted to do or to serve people. They kept on doing that, and that is how values and belief, they propel you throughout, basically. I was meeting ophthalmologist recently, and at a particular age, that ophthalmologist was serving people with precision. You see, after a particular age, our hands, they tremble. I asked him that, don't you feel shaken up many times? You have to gather strength to serve people. He said, no, when I am talking to my patients, I somehow gain strength, and it traverses, in my precision, actually, that strength. So he is gaining strength from his beliefs. That is precisely what I am talking about. Further, the authors, they add that culturally astute managers understand that nourishing the right culture and cultural environment not only adds power to their push, strength for proficient strategy execution, but also promotes strong employee identification with and commitment to the company's vision, performance targets, and strategy. Now let's go to that how it is done. There are leaders behind that. They drive the situation. And as I told you in my earlier sessions, that in this land of Mahatma Gandhi, Bapu, there are, we should take this example first, because you see, he did so much for this country, and this is Bapu's land, Bapu's nation. So he used to say that a man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. You would have heard this. We have so many thoughts around us given to us by Bapu. But mark these words: what he thinks, he becomes. How those thoughts come to you, those are related to the values and belief we nurture, and those are strengthened through cultural strength. When we start, all of us start thinking this way. If we focus upon these, this sentence, these few words, then we definitely would find change in ourselves. And you see, we have taken a paper by V. Nair, Leadership Redefined, published in Harvard Business Review. Bapu has been talked about by everyone, everywhere. Several countries, Bapu's lessons are being taught to understand leadership, values, beliefs, and so on. So we have chosen this paper for demonstrating that everyone globally talks about Bapu. And this paper says that Mahatma Gandhi was a man ahead of his time. Leaders usually are. What this sentence implies is that he thought, he visualized, he thought for long term, basically. He looked at every step with an application, with an implication, as an input to the further step, and so on. And he could visualize that how these things would roll on. He used to visualize that if I would say something today, that would have, results associated with in a long term. He used to think, like, if I may generate a simile, although I am a very small, little person in terms of persona and personality which Bapu had, and I am no one to generate a simile here, but still I dare do that, and please forgive me for that. But Bapu might have thought in terms of being a gardener, sowing a seed, and looking at the seed, he would have visualized, that what kind of a tree it would become. what kind of fruits that tree would give, what kind of a shelter that tree would give, what kind of birds would come and sit on the branches of that tree, what kind of leaves that tree would have, what kind of flowers that tree would have, and so on. So he would have imagined our country that way. He would have imagined societies that way. He would have imagined world that way. Although ideally the world is not what Babu imagined, but still, he used to visualize that, and that is where he actually always taught us ahimsa as a fundamental value, not hurting anyone mentally, physically, in several ways, not hurting anyone anyway. And if you will look into this, you would realize that definitely it encompasses, this one word ahimsa actually encompasses so many things. If we adapt this word in our organizational culture, definitely it would help us at a very larger level actually. So the paper further says that Babu was a powerful communicator. He was, definitely, if you will look into his speeches. So a powerful communicator, he had a strong connect with people across all the levels to the collective vision, and found millions of people loyally following the direction he walked. As the author says, B. Nair, the people are, and this is what I have added to the author's discussion, the words in italics, the people are still walking. You see, he gave us a direction, and we are still walking in that direction, guided by the principles of Bapu. That is what leaders do. They sow a seed and it flourishes into a tree, even if they are not there physically. Bapu is here with us in his thoughts, through his thoughts. His persona is there. We can recognize Bapu in several things what we do today, and we should do that. So that is what leaders do. They take us into a direction basically, and that direction generates principles through which we go. With the help of those principles, we go along, and that makes the life easier. So here I add an element of principles. If we have some principles to follow, our execution becomes very simple basically. These are the principles we should be following, these are the ethical principles we should be following, these are the organizational principles we should be following, and so on. The paper further adds, and then I have slightly changed the sentence, please forgive me for that, and author should also excuse me for that. So he was innovative and certainly fearless in breaking convention to follow an unbeaten path. Unbeaten path, the path which is steady, which can be followed just like that. Basically, that is what is unbeaten path. Because you see, what happens is that so many things come in our way after that. Wars have come, exigencies have come, problems have come, economic problems have come, and so on. But the path becomes unbeaten if we follow those principles, if we follow those values. In management literature, one of the authors I admire, Peter F. Drucker, he has contributed a lot, and he has also talked about leadership. Leadership is the lifting of a man's vision to higher heights. You see, that is why they say great men think alike, great women think alike, great people think alike. So leadership is the lifting of a man's vision to higher heights. You look at beyond times basically, how this world should be. You see, you many a times we cannot assume that how this world actually would be, but how this world should be tends to take us towards how this world would be. That is how organizational vision is also there. We would be talking about that how this organization should be, and that is how that organization actually moves towards that path, and we realize that yes, it is happening that way. And when, as I told you earlier also, that you should be studying the history of organizations which have lived for n number of years, 100 plus years, and you would realize that yes, this is how these organizations have been going on the basis of the cultural values which leadership ingrained in that organization. For example, as I have been repeatedly saying, and I feel proud of that I am standing in the premises of an organization which is here for 177 years now. So vision to higher heights, the raising of a man's performance to higher standard. You see, Standards and benchmarks, they have a tendency of moving up and down, and remember this. And leadership is responsible for taking the standards and benchmarks to a higher level, continuously raising the level of those standards. That is how leadership thinks basically. So, leadership is the lifting of a man's vision to the higher sides, the raising of a man's performance to higher standard, the building of a man's personality beyond its normal limitations. I will just try to generate a simile which is not actually related to organizational leadership, but if you will look at team coaches, for example, people who train athletes, people who train performers, or in any field for that matter, even the directors of movies, cricket team coaches basically, that is what they do. They take people towards higher performance, higher standards of performance, and they develop the personality beyond, their personality is beyond normal limitations basically. I sometimes envy those performers. I I feel that I'm too small in front of those people like our defense personnel who are guided towards the higher purpose and cause, and they safeguard our country basically. I salute our defense forces, I salute our police forces who guard us through and throughout basically. So, they are being coached and guided through those values by the leadership they have. People who go up the Mount Everest, Miss Bachendri Pal for example, I admire her, moving up the Mount Everest without oxygen. She would have been motivated that way basically. Definitely it's her motivation, but she would have got inspiration from someone who would have guided her as a coach and would have guided her to take up that challenge basically. And there are so many people like that. So, then Peter Drucker says that management is doing things right and leadership is doing the right things, and doing the right things takes us towards doing things right, that is performance and execution with precision and higher standards every time. Then we are taking reference from Hitt, Hoskisson and Ireland, a very important book in strategic management area. The name of the book is Strategic Management, Competitiveness and Globalization, Concepts and Cases, 8th edition, published by Southwestern. So, the book says that strategic leadership is the ability to anticipate, envision, maintain flexibility and empower others to create strategic change as necessary. Multifunctional in nature, strategic leadership involves managing through others, managing an entire enterprise rather than a functional subunit, and coping with the change. You see, foreseeing change is important, they do that. They envision what is coming their way. They maintain flexibility so that we do not somehow get broken up on our way, and we generate that kind of a flexibility to actually adapt to the change and go through the change whichever is coming our way in terms of environmental forces. Business environment has so many things, technological changes, political changes and social changes and cultural changes and so on, and lot many aspects. So, they actually take us towards that side. That is what you call strategic leadership. And then further the authors they add that leadership is associated with determining strategic directions. We have just talked about that, but I will briefly enumerate that in business and organizational sense. So, the ideal long term strategic direction, as the author says, has two parts: a core ideology, what do you think that we should be doing actually, an envisioned future, how this world should be, how this organization should be, what we would be doing after 100 years, 100 plus years, despite of the fact that we are having a global view in front of us that things are changing fast and so on, but still would we be there after 100 years, and what we would be doing after 100 years, and what kind of people this organization would have and how they would be leading this after 100 odd years and so on. The core ideology motivates employees through the company's heritage, and that is how heritage gets built up. So, through the company's heritage, But the envisioned future encourages employees to stretch beyond their expectations of accomplishment and requires significant change and progress to be realized. Very important thing, just try to visualize what this is talking about. And this is the last thing of this session which I would be demonstrating, and I would be taking you towards another level of understanding of leadership in my subsequent session. And just to tell you that leadership is such a vast subject that we should actually keep learning about it through examples. Largely examples are very helpful. Persona and personality of great leaders, it's very helpful for we to take lessons from that persona, that personality, or the personality traits they have. We should keep reading about them, and we should keep talking about them. We should keep talking about the principles Bapu told us and the thoughts Bapu nurtured in our culture. So, effective leadership, this is how the authors they describe the structure, this effective leadership in a structural manner. It is associated with determining strategic direction, a long term perspective, establishing balanced organizational control. The other day we were talking about creating a large boundary and then generating freedom within that boundary. So, establishing balanced organizational control, and then it has direct relationship with effectively managing the firm's resource portfolio, enumerating those resources, in fact finding the resources, taking every aspect of those resources into consideration, the strength of those resources into consideration, and visualizing that strength to be converted for our business purpose or organizational purpose and for the benefit of all the members of the value chain, stakeholders, customers, partners, suppliers, everyone. Then the other element is sustaining an effective organizational culture, and that is what we have talked about. So, think about that. This is how effective leadership talks about. They give key thoughts, they give key words, they try to give key principles, they effectively talk to everyone. We would be talking about that. And then emphasizing ethical practices, doing the right things so that things can be done in a right manner. So, when you say that doing the right things, it is actually emphasizing upon ethical practices. I would be coming back to you with several other inputs on leadership through different kinds of examples in my next session. Till then, goodbye.